I'm sure many of you are familiar with Penn State Extension. I know that during stay at home, I've done a lot of your webinars and your pre-recorded amazing resources, especially spotted lanternfly. I bet you're getting a lot of hits on spotted lanternfly at Extension. So great resource, but also the Master Watershed Stewards really can help a lot with public education and outreach. And a lot of them live in the municipalities where we all work. So Megan, I'm going to turn it over to you. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Brian. As Brian mentioned, my name is Megan Hopkins-Storr. I'm with Penn State Extension, and I'm the coordinator for both the Master Gardeners of Chester County and Master Watershed Stewards of Chester and Delaware County. So we're going to go through how they can support your programs. There we go. So before we go through that, let's look at who the Master Watershed Stewards are. So they're volunteers from all different backgrounds and experiences. They go through a comprehensive training. We're actually coming to the end of this year's training. Sadly, that was switched to online instead of in person. But they're all interested in improving and conserving our water resources through watershed education, conservation, and restoration efforts. How the program works locally, as I mentioned, I'm with Penn State Extension, but I have a core group of partners in the Chester County Water Resources Authority, Delaware County Conservation District, and Chester County Conservation District. And we help to plan that educational component as well as some of the outreach programs. And Corey's been great at connecting me with different opportunities and needs. In terms of their missions and goals, it's to educate the community about water and natural resources, assist municipalities with MS4 requirements, and accelerate implementation of BMPs. So all of that kind of goes in line with how we can support you with MS4s. So the four main ways that we can help are public engagement and outreach, public participation and involvement, pollution prevention and good housekeeping, and illicit discharge detection and elimination. And that corresponds to the handout that was sent out beforehand. As I go through this, you'll see pictures of our watershed stewards in action across both counties. So the first part would be public engagement, and that can be through presentations. On the left-hand side is Carol Armstrong, one of our watershed stewards, giving a talk with her EAC about plastics and microplastics. And then on the other side is when we participated in a festival in Kennett Township a few years ago. And I think that was either right before or right after it, like downpoured on us. Public engagement also includes spotted lanternfly, as we mentioned. There are lots of talks and booths and everything. We all try to deal with it. Unfortunately, you can see one of our watershed stewards giving a talk. It is to Open Lands Conservancy because they wanted some educational component as part of their invasive vine removal days. The participants aren't watershed stewards, so I do not have them in the photo, but he's using some of the younger audience members to model how those vines bring down trees, as well as talk about what watershed they're in and how trees are important. And we left that curriculum with OLC after we were done. Public participation and involvement, we give hands-on workshops, so actively show people how to do things in their own backyards. This is a live stake workshop. We actually did it as a train the trainer, so we had consultants brought up from South Carolina Extension. They taught us, we taught our watershed stewards, and then they have gone out to teach the public. Sadly, we had one set up in Kennett Township at one of their new parks right before everything shut down. And so I was at least able to provide them with the materials that we would have given the public and some resources to post on their website. And we're looking forward to being able to get back out in front of people to do some of these things. We are also adding more components like that, such as a fish guide, which is basically a streamside walk to do an observational analysis of your creek. pollution prevention and good housekeeping. So a lot of the BMPs are obviously keeping pollution out. This is at Kimberton Park up in East Pikeland. They had put in a rain garden the year before, but were concerned about what it looked like at that park and how to deal with maintenance and things like that. While we don't take on ongoing maintenance, we do want to support in whatever way is possible. So this is an initial walkthrough to try and figure out what we could do. The Watershed Stewards ended up coming up with a site-specific plan for the natives that were there. They had a list, but it wasn't fully accurate based on the plants that were delivered, but primarily the invasive. So what to do when you see something, what it looks like at different seasons, and ongoing maintenance, including some suggestions for municipal workers for mowing guidelines. On the one side is a vernal pond. This is an upcoming project. Again, things get kind of shut down. So I know the township engineer is very excited for this because they've run out of land in the township to do BMP implementation. So this is at the high school, on property behind the high school that they own. We will help with pollution removal, as well as teaching the high school kids about the vernal pond. And so tracking it, so using it in their classroom curriculum, looking at different species that live there. We'll put in some native plants around the area and are working with another group to help install this and better the area. And that other group I mentioned is another resource that I brought to the high school because I was put in touch with the organization. They were looking for a place for Tree Vitalize. And I said, hey, I'm working with this wonderful group. Why don't you take a look? So there are other things that can just kind of come with an association with us. The other side is in behind New Garden Township Building in their park, and it is installing live stakes. Again, going back to some of that training, this was a separate one with just the Watershed Stewards out there doing it on their own. Although we did talk to some passerbys to tell them what we're doing because you want to include education as much as possible. We don't have an illicit discharge program per se, but these are all pictures of monitoring programs, whether macros or in-stream monitoring station. And because they're out there so often, they happen to notice things. I know of at least one time that there was an output that it smelled funky up in Phoenixville. And so yes, there was a break somewhere. It was dealt with because our watershed steward was out, noticed it, and reported it to a couple people to make sure that it was dealt with. There have been some other things that people have noticed and make sure the right people get notified about them. And I would like to mention the people in the wetsuits. That is Beth, who is out looking at macros because she was so excited to learn about macros in one of our training classes, and some kids happened to be there, so she of course had to start telling them all about the creepy crawlies that are in our creeks and why they're important. So that is a very fast explanation of who we are and how we might be able to help you. Are there any questions or comments? And I saw some things in the chat box, so I will open that up. And I do want to come back to, they are volunteers. So we greatly enjoy doing things. We are not consultants. I cannot say that they will always be available, but we try our best. Sorry, my chat box is not opening.
Just posted a question to give people a chance to participate in chat as well.
Open.
I've been really impressed with the knowledge of these stewards. They're really knowledgeable and very enthusiastic. And again, I think they probably come from a lot of these municipalities directly, which makes it all the stronger.
And they very much, they join us because they want to do things in their backyard. So often on the application will include where they live, what they're involved in, what specifically they're interested in, because yes, they're excited to go out and do more and give back to their communities. And Corey, I'm sorry, are you able to look at the chat box for me?
I am. Yeah, so no specific questions for you, Megan. John had made a note that most municipalities have O&M agreement requirements as part of their 167 ordinances. And these agreements often require the owners of BMPs to submit annual reports. It's kind of more relating to Beth's presentation. And then Brian followed up with a question just asking attendees if anybody out there is currently working with the Master Watershed Stewards, and if so, how they're doing that. But nobody has replied to that yet. So does anybody have any specific question for Megan about how stewards can be involved, helping with some of these MS4 requirements? As Brian mentioned, I've been helping out with some of the Master Watershed Stewards classes this spring. We have a great group. I think there's 18 or so stewards that signed up, and they're very enthusiastic. They're very eager to get out there to make a difference, and they've really acquired a lot of knowledge in the last couple of months. So they have a good foundation, about the MS4 program, about stormwater management and water quality, and especially they have a lot of good knowledge because they're out there in these communities. They're involved sometimes with the EACs and stuff like that and other volunteer groups. They're aware of what's going on. They are a good resource to tap into.
Thanks, Corey. And thanks, Brian, for including me in this.